Hey, what's going on, everyone? Really excited this week to speak with Miguel, who just broke into Zoominfo, one of the biggest market leaders in the sales intelligence space. Miguel came from a home and construction background and was really quickly able to break into tech sales with a really concerted and focused effort. I know you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. His work ethic is contagious, so I hope you enjoy, and let's hop into our conversation now. Miguel, at Zoominfo, great company. Don't want to get ahead of myself. Maybe before we do that, tell us where you were before with some sales experience, but no tech experience. And I'll give you the floor to kind of tell everyone where you were at before you really started looking at tech sales in the first place.
Sure. So I started off in the home remodeling industry. So I've been doing that for a solid like 8 to 10 years. And that's kind of where I started my journey and then transitioned into tech sales.
I know, Miguel, you rather quickly identified tech sales, started looking in that career. Did you have customer facing sales experience in the first place that made you start to identify that? I'm just curious where your sales aptitude maybe was before ultimately breaking into tech sales.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to sales, it definitely started when I was a teenager. I come from a family of immigrants. So when I was around 11 or 12, they really pushed me to sell for them, right? So, they were tired of getting paid minimum wage, masters of their craft, and they were like, hey, how to speak English. That was really the only prerequisite. They were like, you can speak English, you can do it. Go and say this, do this, if they say this, etc. So they would really coach me on how to interact with people, how to negotiate and how to close. And then I took that and really leveraged it in the home remodeling, home improvement industry. And the position I was in was a full sales cycle position. So really being the first point of contact, walking them through, what the experience is going to be, working with a team of like designers, architects, structural engineers, getting permitting, um, interior designers, and really putting it all together, presenting it to them, and then saying, hey, this is what it's going to look like. Here's a timeline. And then ultimately, getting to negotiation and closing it. So really that's kind of in the gist what my sales experience came from and where it was at before I got into Zoominfo.
Nice. Yeah, I guess curious too, Miguel, why tech sales? Like, what was it about tech sales that kind of piqued your interest? What made you say, oh, this is something that I want to do?
Well, to be completely honest, I did buy into the hype a little bit. It's like you see all these videos, and people are like, man, tech sales is so awesome, things like that. But through experience, I learned to be cautious. So, sure, there's the hype and it attracted me. Then after that, I started to look into, oh, okay, what are the pros and cons of tech sales? And the pros are just overwhelming compared to where I was at before. I was
Mhm.
commuting daily, like a total of maybe 3 to 4 hours, just going to work, going to a job site, meeting up with a homeowner, back home, just the back and forth, it's pretty rigorous. And so the first thing that really, really attracted me was um, a remote work from home format or like a hybrid thing,
Mm.
some days in the office, some days at home. Really just cutting that commute time, you know, considerably, and and then using that time to sell, because I'd always thought, man, if I wasn't spending all that time in the car going from point A to point B to C to D to E, I could really, really maximize my time and sell more and make more money. So
Mhm.
really, that was the biggest factor for me. But other than that, just the opportunity in tech, right, is exponentially higher than where I was at before. Uh, just the room for growth, the benefits, the people, so the networking and the relationships that you establish that could really help, in the future, and just being in an industry that's innovative, right? It's on the edge, right? And so it's challenging, it's thrilling, it's comfortable at the same time. So that's those really, the pros for me that made me go, hey, let's do this.
Nice. Well, needless to say, you crushed it. I mean, you're at a market-leading revenue intelligence company, so you
Yeah.
did great. Did great. Very impressive. Yeah, I guess diving a little bit deeper, like Could you sort of set the stage for, where were you at in this process of applying to companies, going through the motion before you're kind of working with us? Like, were you already, actively interviewing? Yeah, just sort of like set the stage for where you were at and what you were doing before working with us, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I actually was applying. I was applying for maybe about a month,
Mhm.
and nothing. Just crickets, dust in the wind, it was bad, right? And so I was like, man, I know I'm qualified. I know I can do this. What's wrong? And then I dived into YouTube University, and then I saw Coach Eric over here, right? And then I was like, you know what? It's probably my resume. Like, right, the first point, the first introduction to who I am is it's just a piece of paper, PDF. And so I was like, man, I really need to like change what I'm doing. And I tried to do it on my own. I went on the internet, I did the Google search, I did YouTube searches, and I used Chat GPT and, all that good stuff. But I came to a point in which I was like, you know what? I need some guidance for someone who really knows how to do it to condense the time. Sure, I could probably, break into the industry on my own, but it's going to take me a significant amount of time through trial and error to find out what works.
Mhm.
So that month went by. Then I got into the program, right, higher levels with you guys, and it just clicked. It was like, oh, I was presenting myself just the wrong way, It's like I should highlight these achievements, right? And simplify and delete everything else. And then boom, it was just like a complete different experience, like just a 180.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And obviously excited. I think, I love when I see people come in and just exactly to your point, like one, you've already put in the effort and it's like a light bulb where you're like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. And then you just absolutely attacked it. Maybe for someone's reference, again, you're at like one of the top sales intelligence companies out there. Maybe just some high level guidance on the interview process at more an individual level, right? Because I think that there's a lot of knowledge about what a typical process looks like for
Mhm.
you. You're getting into those mid stages, those final round interviews. What do you think we really equipped you with that set you apart from quote unquote the average candidate?
That's a good point. Well, definitely what to expect, be prepared. I think I think folks are always they have that mentality, I need to prepare, but how am I going to prepare? What do I need to prepare for, and just what are they going to hit me with? And so you guys are actually in the industry and you've been through that experience yourself. So, to be able to convey that to me really gave me confidence, and actually something that happened, I think it was between the screening interview and the second interview. I didn't hear back for like a day or two. And from the first conversation, I was expecting like an email with an invite like immediately, and I didn't get it. And maybe I got a little impatient, but something you guys taught me was, hey, just like cold call. So he called me from a phone number, and I cold called him. I called him and I was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I'm interested. I'm going through different interviews. I want to work with you guys. When can I expect that next step?" And a few hours later, boom, I get the email. And so I think that throughout my experience with this interview in particular, I think that definitely put me ahead, you know. And so going through the program and learning all these different skills, especially just taking that initiative, setting yourself apart from the other applicants, just gives you that push to be a little bit more creative. And so I think that push to be creative and setting yourself apart was definitely key.
Yeah, I love it. I know you were balancing multiple offers, and maybe that's something we'll get into shortly. But for my reference too, I mean, how long? So you tried for a month, you joined Tech Sales Ascension. How long from then to getting an offer? What was the length of that time?
Sure. So I joined the program, and once I joined, I spent, I think, a few days just powering through the courses. And then once I powered through the courses from there, once I was actually active and changing my resume and everything, I think it took about 2 weeks, something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
before I hand it back to Chris too, like one, that's amazing. And I know, like, I remember like meeting on the live calls that we had, and it was like, oh man, like you had an interview at Zoominfo, you had like tons of other interviews lined up. Maybe a decision too, like tying this back into something you mentioned earlier. You got, and I think it's fine. Don't get me wrong. You got caught up in the hype of tech sales. You get out there, and all of a sudden you realize how quick you can make it happen. You actually turned down an offer for potentially a slightly better title and higher comp on the surface, and actually
Mhm.
chose to go to Zoominfo, which is a market leader, all of these different things. And I ultimately think personally it was a great decision. But like, maybe walk us through that. And for someone that's trying to break in, right, that's considering multiple offers, like, I'll leave it open ended to you. But what was that experience? How did you ultimately make the decision yourself?
Yeah. So, the decision in the beginning, I was kind of lost, honestly. I didn't know what to do, but Chris was a great mentor here, and he gave me lots of good guidance, and you did as well, Eric. And it really helped me um, find out what was important, right? Long term. So sure, in the short term, I may be making a better total comp, right? But what is that going to look like in the long term? So once I had that mindset, then I kind of just broke it down from there. Zoominfo is very heavy logo. It's a great logo. And if I can do it here, I could do it anywhere else too, right? And that's something that really came across from my conversations with Chris. It's like I establish myself, I can set myself anywhere else too, and just the trajectory from there, right? And so what really dissuade me from taking the other option was the fact that it was a startup, and it had just started very early stage. And so I wouldn't have that guidance I would have had. Well, I do have with Zoominfo. They have a great training course, an onboarding time, and just having that, you know, definitely once you're transitioning from industry to a different industry, it really gives you those legs to really like sprint and run from there. And so I think I would have definitely been a bit more shaky if I was in that startup, you know. So I think that was the biggest thing, I wanted to make sure I solidified myself in the industry, and it was a bit just a little bit more risky on the startup. I could have done it. I think I could have. Maybe it would have taken more time. Maybe I wouldn't have made the same amount of contacts, right? Because at Zoominfo, I'm meeting a lot of different people. I'm interacting with a lot of different companies in different industries because everyone uses Zoominfo, right? So I think it was definitely the best choice.
Yeah, I'm proud of you. Like I know it's really tough when you have one offer over here that's like, 25K higher, and on paper it looks like it's much better. That's kind of like the trap of tech sales sometimes is you get this OT on paper and you're assuming that you're going to hit that number, but it's all about making the most calculated decision and setting yourself up for success like further down your career. So very proud of how you navigated that whole journey and ultimately the choice that you went with. I mean, like you said, you already have like full clarity of the decision that you made. That's awesome. I guess, like just kind of, closing out, like you kind of really just hit the ground running super, super quick. Like, do you have any tips or any advice for anybody else who's, maybe looking at tech sales, trying to break in, who doesn't have training or any coaching out there? Like anything that you want to, throw away to the people before we hop off?
Yeah, I think just being persistent, right? The market's tough right now. If you really want to break in, um, just take it a step at a time, right? And find mentors who have been able to do this successfully, like you guys, right? This is a great program. It was just amazing for me. I wasn't expecting to break in this quick, right? So when I saw the videos from Eric, hey, these are the testimonies, I was like, okay, Eric. I was like, let's give it a shot. So it's possible. It's realistic. If I can do it, anyone watching this video can do it. Honestly, I come from a very rough background. It's like home remodeling, right? Home improvement industry. So we are a bit more on the rugged side, honestly. So yeah, just be persistent, be resilient, don't give up. Um, Learn what resources you have, available to you. Lots of different. I just learned that I could have, you know, uh, gone into like some different softwares to get contact data, and break through and just get rid of that whole, uh, email or LinkedIn in-mail messaging. Just pick up the phone and call someone, and just cold call them, right? And if you could do that successfully, you set yourself apart, you impress someone, you're in. Right? And it just takes that foot in the door to get that first interview, and then from there, just I'm sure you'll kill it, right? So just be resilient, learn what resources you have, find some guidance, and yeah, and just be focused and disciplined about it.
Nice, nice. Yeah, well, really appreciate the time, Miguel. And again, we're super proud of just how quickly you crushed it, how well you've, been a student as well. Like you're very coachable all the way throughout. And yeah, I really liked your message too. It's all about working hard. And I think a lot of people are worried they don't have tech experience, they don't have sales experience, not gonna be able to do it. But yeah, I mean, I really echo that same notion. So thanks so much, Miguel. Really appreciate the time and super excited to see you absolutely crush it at Zoominfo. So Eric, I don't know if you have any closing remarks as well.
No, well said. Yeah, definitely appreciate the time, Miguel.
All right. Thanks, guys.